Satisfaction came in a chain of reaction. I couldn't get enough, so I had to self-destruct. The heat was on, rising to the top. Oh, 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 burn, baby, burn. Oh, yeah. I'm gonna hustle, bump, funky chicken everyone out of the water with this costume. Love is the new normal, and I'm living proof. Burn, baby, burn. Not dressed yet. Sheesh! We have to be at the sock hop in like 20 minutes, and we're picking Mavis up on the way. So get a move on, my friend.
Is that what you're wearing? Looks like one of those Sputnik-style retro lightning fixtures that seem to be all the rage on HGTV right now. It does, however, make reference to a Nick Cave soundsuit, which is very now. But really, just what kind of love are you going as?
Guess.
Not another guessing game. I thought you said we were in a hurry.
Come on, guess. Guess which of the 7 Greek words for love I am. It will be fun.
Oh, all right. For starters, you are most definitely not pragma.
Correctamundiopolis. I am not committed, compassionate love. Boring. Guess again.
Are you eros, romantic, passionate love?
And you're supposed to be from the upper echelon?
What?
The upper echelon. You know, nose in the air, mucky muck types, top drawer.
Give me strength. I think you mean echelon. The CH is soft.
I'll give you soft, but fine. Echelon then. Anyway, if I was Eros, I'd be all red and soft and steamy.
I was thinking of a mirrored disco ball over the, bed, setting the mood, as in, that's the way, I like it.
I didn't even know you knew that song, but wrong. Yet again.
Fine. Intimate, authentic friendship, philia.
Nope.
Storge, unconditional familial love.
Nope.
And it can't be eros.
We already talked about that. Sheesh.
Well, let me think. This is a real challenge.
You've gone through like all of them.
Philotia, self-love.
Duh.
But the shine and all that glitz.
Like looking in a mirror, self-reflection, loving what I see.
Fascinating. And the spikes remind us of the pearliest, dangerous nature of focusing on the self. And the tinsel tells us self-love is never clean and without vine-like tendrils. Seductive, but entangling.
Wrong. The spikes are like cool alien antennae, and the tinsel catches the light when I dance, thus bringing more attention to moi.
You are consistent, if nothing else. Now, if we can shift the focus just a little, I want your opinion on my choices of costume.
Before we get started, what's your goal? If you're hoping to get lucky, well, that's one thing. And if not, well, that's dumb and boring.
Just like me. Yes. And really, Cheese, why is it always about the fondue with you?
A few skewers, a little dried bread, some melted cheese.
You're disgusting.
No, normal is what I am. I'm young and ripe and out for love.
You're out to get arrested is what you are. Would you just condescend to lend me a hand with my outfit, please?
Chucky Chuck, coming to me, Charlie Cheese, for advice? Unheard of. Rarer than an expiry date on a jar of cheese whiz. More shocking than soy sauce on basmati rice. As scandalous as cold pizza dipped in soda pop. I take it back. That combination is yummy, yummy, yummy. But you get my point.
Oh, forget it.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Right, thanks. So, I'm going to the sock hop as agape, empathetic.
Universal love. Cal surprise. Not.
So, what do you think of this one?
Looks like a ball of moldy gorgonzola, all yucky blue and green and brown.
It's the earth, for heaven's sake. Universal love.
Not very sexy. Next.
Hmm, or this one. Hmm,
Let me
yes.
guess. Acid rain, melting shoelaces, diseased mutant alien snot pouring down from the sky.
Acid rain? Alien snot? This represents the shared experience of all of us, the myriad of emotions and ideas that just float in the air, that join and connect.
Something's floating in the air, all right, but it ain't ideas or myriads. Besides, it doesn't even hide your face. What else you got?
Oh, well, there's, this, I suppose. It was my first thought, but, I'm not sure about it.
I love, love it, Chucky. Very Toy Story 3, all mutant and maimed, but without the taking over the daycare part.
Yes, but is the meaning clear, do you think?
Speak up. I can't really hear you through all that stuffing.
I said, is the meaning of the costume clear?
Meaning soft, fluffy, cute as a button. You're gonna get so much attention.
Since you are, as usual, swimming in the shallow end, I'll take a moment to explain my thesis.
Thesis? For a costume. I can hardly wait.
I call it Eternal Bear of Universal Love.
Par for the course.
The texture, connective and supple, welcoming. The shape, non-threatening, universal. The color, warm, cozy. An earthy day for all. Agape.
Overthought as usual, but with cute results. I think you nailed it, Chucky. Remember, though, all that blah, blah, blah is kind of a buzzkill, so I keep the talk to a minimum. Now, we gotta hit the road. You know what Mavis is like.
What's she going as? Do you know?
Ludus.
Playful, flirtatious love. But at her age? Yikes.
You know Mavis, all spunk and pizzazz.
I'll wager you a toonie that she has chosen pink or a derivative thereof as the main color for her costume.
Goes with her hair, and I'll take that wager, but now let's skedaddle. I can hardly wait to see what you did for decorations.
I think you'll be pleased. The gym has been divided into 7 sectors, each one corresponding to one of the words for love, and each love zone has a color wash, which underpins the idea.
I'll underpin you if you don't can it. Burn, baby, burn. Disco Inferno. Burn, baby, burn.
Well, hi, everybody. Happy New Year. My name is Matt Gould, and I am the host and moderator for this series. Now, while Chucky and Charlie are out tripping the light fantastic at The Greeks Have 7 Words for Love Sock Hop, I thought I'd get the love ball rolling here this evening for our third Hear and Be Heard 10 Community Conversations, co-hosted by the Red Deer Public Library and the Red Deer Puppetry Collective.
Yeah!
You two are on the road already.
You know the rules. Every time you say Red Deer Puppetry Collective,
we stick our heads in and yell, yay!
Well,
it's in our contract after all.
Yeah, all right. Okay, thanks for that. And you two look absolutely great. So I think it's filatia for you, Charlie. And for you, Chucky, let me think. So we have texture, which is connective and supple, welcoming. The shape, which is non-threatening and universal. The color is cozy and warm. Agape?
You are good.
Hey, how'd you do that? How did you do that?
It's just luck, I guess.
Suppose that's why you get the big, oh, well, okay, not really the big bucks, but the whatever bucks.
And those charming bow ties.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, get out of here, you two. You'll be late. And say hi to Mavis for me.
Later, Mr. Moderator.
Yep.
Likewise.
How on earth did he know we were going to pick Mavis up? Sheesh, and the exact same words about your costume. Scary.
Okay, so let's get started, huh? If you haven't already guessed, tonight's subject, we're going to be kicking around the love ball in all of its multifaceted splendor, from the familial to the physical, from the universal to the intimate. And the Greeks do have 7 words for love, all of which will take us down its own special kind of a rabbit hole. So let's spin our hearts to our sleeves and get started. Thanks everybody for joining us for Hear and Be Heard, 10 Community Conversations. And it's a love story tonight, as you heard earlier on in our puppet show. So before we get started, and as we get started, I'm going to introduce you to 3 fantastic human beings who have joined us for this evening's conversation. And we'll each give you, let's say, 3 to 4 minutes to have a little introductory love story. And then we'll get into some questions and conversation, and we'll see how that goes. So if that feels good, we're going to start with Cheryl Jamie. And she is an Indigenous freelance artist and activist and a human rights person who's involved in both of those things. But she also has as a goal, as a job goal, to be a crime scene investigator and cleaner upper, which is like a whole story in itself. I think that's like so fantastic. Anyway, so Cheryl, why don't you get us started and give us a love story?
Hello, everybody. I'm really excited to be a part of the conversation tonight. Definitely, I don't know, love is, I guess, in the air. My mom just got a bouquet of chocolate the other day from her boyfriend. A little jealous. I wish that was me, but I definitely get a little bashful on the topic. I guess a little love story for you guys tonight would have to be when we had bought our first, well, I guess not our first, we had bought a family dog, and she is still in our family. Her name's Puppy. She's 11 years old. She's a wiener dog, and every single time I see her, just the love in her eyes and how excited she gets to see, how excited she is when she gets to see me or my family. It's just, it makes my heart so warm. It's like, wow, this thing is just so genuinely in love with me, even if I'm just like, I could literally just be sitting and they're just so excited to see me. It's like, wow, I feel so special, and that's a great feeling. That is probably like, I mean, my love life is a little dry, so it's probably as good of a love story you're gonna get out of me right now.
Okay, good. Well, thanks for being brave.
Of course.
We're going to crawl up the alphabet. And one of the reasons I like to go alphabetically is because when I was young and, you know, not very sportive, I was always like the last person chosen for teams and things. So I figure alphabetizing is the most straightforward, honest kind of way. So we're going to move to Donna Bishop next, and you're going to give us a love story and get a sense of that from you. And Donna is a cultural mentor at the Red Deer Friendship Center. She was retired after 26 years of working in the correctional services. So there's your crime scene stuff all over for you, Cheryl. And anyway, yeah, so Donna worked in the correctional services and is retired. And she uses the medicine wheel to help move her life in a nice circular kind of fashion. So Take it away, Donna.
This is so wild. I feel like you, Cheryl. Oh, as soon as you started talking about your dog, well, my poor 10-year-old moved in, must have heard you. They do have unconditional love. And with all these Zoom meetings going on, I was going to talk about your Greek word, the last one, universal love, love the self, love everything around you universally, the environment, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. But when she came here and she has this very sad look, it's like Eeyore, just one look, like, and I relate to Cheryl. I got to say that's unconditional. These times, I've never seen her so needy. So I didn't know she loved me that much. Actually, I thought she rather didn't like me for the 4 years that we rescued her. So it's a surprise. I think it's the month of love. So I love you, Evil. Her name's Eve, but I call her Evil, the two faces of Eve. But love is everywhere. It is what you make it. It's the intention, I believe. It's the action. Some of us love with food. We express ourselves by food. Some of us express ourselves by nice little things that we do for one another. But I think in this time of COVID, I think love should be everywhere. It should be kindness. It should be compassion. It should be unconditional. It should be open-minded. There should be no borders, whether gender, race, color, creed, from the four-legged to the winged, all of that. I think I think we're coming to a consciousness. Love is a consciousness. Anyway, thank you.
Cool, thank you. That's great. Taking it to a nice elevated plane, starting with the dogs. Okay, Mary, let's go to you and see what direction you're gonna take it in. So Mary is a mom of 4 young adults, and she was saying last night that dealing with teens and getting your head around the fact that they're growing up can sometimes be a challenge. She's married to a wonderful woman. She is a nurse, and she also is an artist, and she loves to hear people's stories, and she loves to, in a sense, record life's passage with photographs. And she also mentioned last night, and I think this might lead into some of the ideas around love. One of the things she said last night, or you said, sorry, Mary, last night, was you were talking about your work in palliative care. So there's all kinds of stories and all kinds of love, and you see expressions of that at that end of life kind of stage, which I would imagine has given you lots to think about, lots of lessons for your own life. So I'll zip it for a moment and let you jump in.
Well, thank you, Matt. Yeah, absolutely. My work as a palliative and end-of-life nurse has definitely taught me a few things about life and about love. Not only have I heard amazing love stories through my patients, I've also heard of some really tragic loss of missed opportunities and wishful thinking that they could redo relationships and love. I think the biggest thing that I brought away from my work is to live authentically to myself and to love who my heart wants to love. So with that being said, it's like I choose, sort of like what Donna was saying, I choose intention, and I choose to focus on the love that the universe gives us and the all the good that is out there, because there is a lot of good and connections out there, and just focusing on the ability to see that good. I think it has come with age. It definitely was not something that was in my youth. I definitely was much more for that romantic passion love, or that flirtatious love in my youth, very superficial without any real depth to it. I think as I've aged, and especially since I've met my wife, I've definitely have turned more into that that unconditional, hopefully with some romance in it still after this time. But I think that all has come down from the ability to love myself and to accept that love. That's
Great.
it.
Yeah, no, nice. I think there's a kind of a common thread in that area. We all spend so much of our lives maybe just trying to find our way into that, maybe self-acceptance, maybe self-love. That self-love, as the Greeks were saying it, it's not only about the narcissistic love, the looking in the mirror and saying, boy, I'm so fantastic, but it moves into that deeper place of a love of self, in a healthy love of self, I think. And I think that's like fantastic. So why don't we take a look at those 7 Greek words? And I had sent them out to you yesterday. And if you don't mind, see one that jumped out to you maybe the most, and tell us a little bit why and how that sort of really affected you and touched you, because we know that these are all different shades of the color love, yeah? But if there was one that sort of struck each of you, why don't we just hear from that, and that might lead into questions and conversation that we can have. So let's go backwards. I'll put Mary on the spot first, then we'll roll back to Donna and then to Cheryl. How's that?
Well, thank you.
Oh, you're really welcome.
So when you talk about one particular one, I think I have to go back to that self-love, because, and not in the narcissistic way, but in the I am worthy way, because it took me a really long journey to get to where I'm at and to be able to believe that I am worthy. And I think my wife had a lot to do with that journey, to be honest. Her own healing, as well as her own journey of self-love, just those shared goals. So it kind of goes into that pragma love too. Like there's a lot of overlapping in a lot of them. But learning to really love myself and coming to the acceptance that in order to have the connection and the depth of relationships that I want with other people, I have to allow myself to do that. Being in a relationship with a woman has had its challenges all throughout. That has been for sure. We've been pretty lucky with the community, not only of our peers, but also of our community have been pretty accepting. But we know that the challenges that are faced out there, and we advocate quite willingly for that freeness to love who you love, without those boundaries and without those constraints that society puts on it. I have to put the little plug in there that, of course, there needs to be boundaries, right? It needs to be a healthy love. It needs to be something that is beneficial for both of you without a hierarchy in the whole relationship. And I really feel that for the most part, that was really lacking in my previous relationships. Like when I was talking about when I was younger, and you have that flirtatious love or that really passionate love, but it really lacked that depth of connection that I was seeking. And I had to find that self-love in order to allow myself the worthiness of accepting that love.
So do you think that as a woman who loves women, some of your love issues, you say that personal struggle and move towards acceptance? Because I know that as a gay man, I still carry around with me vestiges of the generation that I grew up in and the way that I was treated as a young person, and how I have to sort of push through that. And I want to just say, give a quick little story. I happen to have been talking to my family today on the phone, and it sort of came up that sometimes, when you get phone calls from people who are trying to sell you a service, they'll phone my house, for example, and I'll pick up and they'll say, is Mr. McFedrin home? And I'll say, no, he's not. And then they'll say, is Mrs. McFedrin home? And so for me, it's this jarring thing. So most of the time I correct them and say, you know what? The world is not built the way you think it is. And therefore, any sale you might have had, for example, of your service, you've lost because you came at it from this kind of place, a gentle place, of ignorance in a sense, right? And saying the world is this bigger place and there are all these different kinds of love. So, the idea that you and your wife work through and maybe are still working through some of those both internalized societal constrictors, hey?
Absolutely. So there's a lot of factors involved with that. A part of my self-love journey last year, I performed in the Vagina Monologues, which is a performance that helps to end violence against women. And I met an amazing group of strong women through that. And last night, a couple nights ago, we're actually having this conversation about when you live an alternative lifestyle as a gay man, gay woman, and whatnot, every time you meet someone new, you need to come out of the closet. You need to not only fight the assumptions that they have, but I have been told my entire life that I don't look gay. So it's almost like I have to defend who I am. It's like almost like I need extra gayness or something, right? And like, what am I supposed to be doing? Wearing a plaid shirt? Like, and no offense against plaid shirts, I love them too. But it's just that stereotype, right? Yeah. And it's quite frustrating because not only do I have to come out every time I meet someone, but so does my children, right? So every time they meet a new friend or a new teacher, they have to say that, they have two moms basically, right? Even though they still have a biological father, they still need to come out. For the most part, I don't think it has directly affected too much of theirs. I've raised pretty strong, independent children that believe in equality and rights. And in this house, love has always been love, obviously. So, but just that frustration of always needing to come out to someone. Sometimes I let it go, but it usually eats at me when I let it go, right? Like, I should be fighting for the elimination of those assumptions as opposed to just sloughing it off. But some days you have more bite in your fight than other days, right?
Well, and as you say, it brings you to the point then how important is language, the words that we're using, because some people just sort of slough it off and sort of say, well, why do you make such a noise about it? What's the big deal? Well, they have no history that's shared with us. They don't understand where we're coming from and these assumptions. And right now, I think because the dialogue in the world on the internet and because everything is so visible and so recorded, the dialogue around gender, around sexuality, around language has become so important. Yes, in some ways, maybe there is a balance that's been lost on a certain degree with the trolling and all the stuff that happens on the internet. But I believe that these conversations that we're having now and that are floating around in the world are really important because it is time for people to catch up and be aware that when they're phoning my house, don't assume that there's a Mrs., et cetera, right?
Yeah,
and it doesn't
exactly.
it doesn't mean you have to pander, but guess what? Feeling like you're on the outside all the time. And once again, as you say, I get into a cab and I have to say, the cabbie says, so you didn't bring your wife on the trip? And I go, oh my God, I have to, yes or no. I mostly I choose to say, well, my partner, he is at home. And then the cabbie sort of goes, oh, and then freezes, right? And almost drives into a car. But anyway, so Donna, if you want to just take us to your, thanks, Mary, take us to your word from the 7, if you would.
I don't know how to pronounce it. That's why I'd like you to, Matt, the last one.
Agape?
Agape.
Oh, no, yeah, agape. Yeah, agape.
Agape. It sounds so native, right? Agape.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and what was the definition of it again?
That is the universal love. So I'm just going to take a look at this. This is the love that extends to all people, whether it's a member of your family or distant strangers. It's kind of like this universal love.
That's what I was born into. I'm a kid from the 60s, Scoop, but that didn't impede I called it a love lens. I was born in the right era, the 60s, love, peace. I had 29 foster sisters that would leave beautiful impressions with me of hippie clothes and flowers in the hair and love and our patches on it was such a great time. And that's the premise of how I was raised. And then being Indigenous on top of that and having that calling all my life, that there was a spiritual part that called me, kept me balanced. There was a light of love somewhere leading me into a great area, because no matter what trauma we had in a household full of very interesting foster children in those days, to what was happening socially in the world at that time, women burning their bras and burning their dinners and burning candles at both ends, so to speak, you know, like it was a great time. There was an awakening to this consciousness, which carried on and became all sorts of different flavors later. And I never had the lens. I never seen color. I didn't see gender. I just seen, when I seen two people, whether they be the same sex or a different sex or whatever, when I felt them in love, I felt the love from them. So it's a consciousness where we feel before we see and we think, and then that's when it gets transmitted into all those old things we learned about separating things and compartmentalizing everything to do with the human condition. And I choose not to. I like to be ADHD about everything. So it's a mishmash of color and rainbows and genders and races and so many things that open up that chakra to allow people to come into my space, because it starts with that feeling that you generate inside yourself. That's why I like the medicine wheel. You go right around that mental, emotional, spiritual. It's all, there's not one without the other. Just like you were saying, Mary, how all of those Greek words overlapped each other. That reminds me of that medicine wheel, and that is inclusive. Inclusive? Yeah, that means everybody, right? Because I get a little bit mixed up about my words and stuff like that. But then we come back to what we're talking about. And this was the time, it was like the universe just lined up, that unconditional love, and allowed a portal to open up during this time for us to start walking gently with these beautiful teachings and start to open up. Like for the Indigenous people, ceremonies have just started to come back without telling secrets to go to a lodge or a different kind of a ceremony. So the two-spirited gift, that was still quite underlapped. That was histories eons ago, where they were, the only reference I could, when I was doing my research 25 years ago, was the French word bradash came up. So we didn't have a Google machine in those days, so you had to do and look it up. And then start talking to those old ones, my Muslim, and then the people in those old societies that would have been 100 by now, that still had those snippets of those old teachings. And we didn't call it Bradashes. In each clan, it was a different name, but a beautiful name. And they were revered, very important, because they walked in two worlds. It was a distinct society. There was no shame. They were gifted. And they were loved and adored by the community, both in whatever role that person chose to play. So I never looked at it any different when I grew up. And it was so much in my family that I grew up in not only my adopted family, but my birth family, as I found out later, that I just was kind of like this little kid, this rainbow warrior that just seen love for love. I didn't see it being put into any slots, just two people that loved each other. There could be a compassionate love. There could be a hotsy-totsy love. There could be a poopy-doopy love, you know, and you see the different stages of change and how from a passionate woman or a passionate man in those days, and they get to be 80 years old. And there's a love there that's so intimate that might not be physical anymore. And that was a song a long time ago by Kathy Mateo, Where Have You Been, right? Those kind of things. So anyway, I could go on. I'm a long-winded moderator. Thank you.
No, well, that's great. Yeah. So we'll come back to a few things, because I got sort of a question about maybe the current state of the world and love in the world. But let's move on to Cheryl and see if you've got a jackpot word there for us, Cheryl.
Well, you know what? I was actually going to go like the same word that Donna chose. How do you pronounce agape?
Agape, yeah.
Agape. It sounds like escape. Like escape. But yeah, no, you know what? Growing up, it's always a different experience for everybody. And you know, I still have a lot of growing up to do. I'm only 24, so you know, I'm just at the tip of the iceberg right now. It's gonna get more exciting. Yeah, no, for me personally, I have to agree with that because I am a very, very empathetic person. I haven't really had the nicest kind of life, you know. I'm very obviously not white. I am I'm indigenous AF. And yeah, no, my experience growing up, you know, I wasn't very much accepted by my family just because I'm not as cultured, but living in white communities, I wasn't really accepted in the community either. So it was kind of a gray area and having to like learn not to be miserable. And, you know, some people are raised a certain way and, you know, it kind of sucks to be on like the lower end of the stick. But for me personally, I hold a lot of self-love. I'm very self-confident. I see no reason as to why I shouldn't love myself, you know, and it helps me find light in the world, and it helps me give light to the world because I've always just been a humanitarian. I've always been a giver. I'm a firm believer in the fact that people need people. You can't thrive on your own entirely. There's always going to be a point in your life where you need to ask for help, and you need that empathy in order to help people genuinely. And yeah, no, I believe love is a universal language. It comes in different forms. It's like Donna here said, it could be poopy doopy. It could be a little fun, but it could be super serious, like a soap opera. But yeah, no, I just feel like people need to have radical kindness. People need to approach other people with coming from a genuine space, an honest space. And I feel like, yeah, no, people just need people. People need to be nicer. People need love in their hearts. And just having that kind of experience in my life, it's made my heart a lot bigger than most people would be at, I guess. But yeah, no, that's kind of me. I like the word agape. It sounds like it sounds like rape. But
Whoops. Well, yeah. Oh, thank you for that. So a question I have then, it seems like we're dancing around a certain something. So in the world that we're living in right now, that is rather divisive and politically divided, I wonder how these, let's say, messages of love can begin to sort of circulate, or as many people believe, it starts with us and how we treat people and how we react to people. And then they sort of say, well, that kind of was sweet and that was sweet, and that sort of moves. And maybe there is this concentric sort of ripple effect that happens. Anybody want to comment on a sense of how these challenging times, I guess, sort of politically and those kinds of things make it sometimes really hard? I find it personally really hard to turn on the love sometimes, you know, especially maybe living in this province with this government, for example, and not to make it too politicized, but to sort of say, you know, this that we're talking about sort of expends out. So I don't know, maybe raise a finger if you've got a thought you want. Okay, Mary, go.
Oh, I can talk about this for a very, very long time. So please.
Okay, you got.
Tell me when enough is enough. So when we think about what's going on in our world right now, and more narrowed in on our communities, there's a lot of division and a lot of lack of connection. And this isn't something that has happened overnight. This is something that has been breeding for a very, very long time. That's how we got here. I think in order to undo it, to heal it, we really need to start adapting our thought of tolerance. And I have a love-hate relationship with that word, because I think tolerance sometimes can be interpreted as in we tolerate people's basic human needs being threatened. That's not what I'm talking about when I talk about tolerance. I'm talking about tolerance of differences. So especially between the races and the genders, the diversity in genders. Does it really matter which bathroom someone goes into? No, it doesn't. When you talk about love and acceptance, it just needs to be, we just need to be louder. At the beginning of this pandemic, I was thrown into a scenario where I was all of a sudden managing a team of palliative and end-of-life nurses in a pandemic where people are dying. So if you can imagine, our workload had increased drastically, and the burnout and the compassion fatigue was huge. Not only were we increased workload during a pandemic, but the government was attacking us as well. Medical, I'm not making this very political, but they were basically saying that we don't need you, right? Like, nurses, you're dispensable. And we really had to focus and look. Our warriors are out there. The people who scream love, they're out there. They're just not loud enough, right? We just need to get vocal. We need to get visible. We need to represent. I know the work that Cheryl has been doing has been amazing as well. There's just so much work to be done. And we just have to tie up our boots and get it done, right? I have no answers. I know it seems like there's a lot of bad in the world right now. And I think technology is both to blame for that, but also it can be used for good as well, right? So if you think about it, back in the 60s, like Donna was talking about, we didn't really know what was going on across the world instantly, right? We didn't have it thrown in our face where we had to process that. And I think we lack the ability to process that instant information all over the world. And I think just really doing that self-care, that temperature check for your fatigue. And we obviously are all very caring, compassionate individuals, very empathetic individuals. We need to take care of ourselves in order so we can keep fighting. But we need to keep doing these community conversations. We need to keep having our voices being heard, that this is the world that we believe in, and this is the world that we live in, and we won't accept anything else.
Right. So it kind of takes love to that front burner. Now, before
Absolutely.
we get to maybe Cheryl, I think you're heating up there for a little something. Anybody who's watching, feel free to throw us comments or ask any questions, because we're just having kind of a free-for-all conversation about love here. So if anybody wants to, we'll see that chat down in the bottom, and I'll pretend I can read it and then spit it out. So anyway, Cheryl, yeah, so moving, because you're working with Red Deer Against Racism, right? Isn't that?
Yeah, I actually run Red Deer Against Racism, so I can tell you right now, it has definitely been emotionally and mentally taxing. You have to keep up with absolutely everything it is that you see on the news, what's happening in your town, what's happening in surrounding areas, and sometimes it gets really disheartening, especially because, unfortunately, not everybody is going to agree with your worldview. And for me personally, I feel it's very important, regardless of people's opinions, where it is they're coming from, to leave the floor open. Everybody has the right to say anything, and you just got to be patient with your approach. You got to be patient with people, and just especially even dealing with the threat of supremacy, and that in itself is very, very challenging too. It's like Mary said, you gotta learn how to take the time to practice self-care rituals. And you gotta remind yourself that, it might seem really, really overwhelming. The world might seem like it's on fire. It's like that meme of that dog sitting in a chair and like everything's on fire and he's sitting there like, oh, this is fine, drinking out of a teacup. Sometimes it feels like that, but for me personally, I do believe change can happen. It's a very, very slow process, but you know what? Even just the littlest steps and milestones seem like big milestones, and you just gotta as hard as it is, you gotta remain positive. You gotta keep focused on what it is what goals you want to set and accomplish. And like I said, not everyone's going to agree with everything. And you just got to remind yourself that that's okay. It's going to be okay. And to set aside that time for yourself 100%, because I can tell you right now with what it is that my team is doing, because I work with about 3 other groups as well, the Alberta Humanitarian Initiative, Black Indigenous Alliance, Defund, To Fund, YYC, like it is go, go, go all the time. And sometimes the things that we read is absolutely, it's really stressful. And we are all reminding each other, you know, it's going to be okay. We have you, if you need people to talk to, set aside that time. Yeah, no, my biggest thing is just to stay positive and focus on the goal, and, you know, change is going to happen.
Right. And as you were speaking, actually, I was thinking of that image of it's from the 1960s, and this is, I think, Kent State in the United States, at the university where all those students were killed, and they had the soldiers all lined up, and then they had some hippie type kind of guy, or a woman maybe, who was presenting the soldier with a flower. So you're seeing this very physical manifestation of these two opposite ideas and opinions and thoughts, and someone, instead of escalating it, they were saying, here's a flower. Yeah. So Donna, what do you have to say about, in some ways, the smell of the world right now?
Smell the world right now. Wow. It's a good thing I burnt out my nose in that era too, because I can't smell anything anymore. Just kidding, everybody. No, I'm not. Anyway, but it's watching young women like Cheryl. You light that fire in this old fart's heart. I'm telling you, that's love. That's love, where us old girls can, now that, you know, we've had our time in the sun, and we got to give that puppy a rest. So now we stand back as the old ones, holding our pipes for you kids, and holding you young women up there, and young men that are going to be fighting the good fight, right? And that's where it's almost like I'm channeling this old woman that comes through, because it's so, the wisdom that those old people had when they had to fight for rights, but they didn't fight. He said, my Muslim used to say, you know, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And I'm like, okay, I heard this 1,000 times. And then he said, but you can make him thirsty. And that's just it, is making people thirsty. And once again, you know, it's like you're a racehorse, right? And you're sitting there, you have an end goal. You want to hit that finish line, whatever race they're running. But those purebreds are real hoitsy-toitsy. They go around and they're kind of like doing the old shoplifter shuffle, kind of looking around. So they're not focusing on the end game. So all of a sudden they put blinders on them. That's our community when we have a focus on something. And when those gates open, instead of looking at the other horses that are running where we're at in the game, we focus on the end game and not worry too much. Those that want to follow will follow. Those that want to come along will come along. It's that leading by example in those precious teaching moments that are so freaking tense. Trust me, I've had my ass up against the wall a few times. I didn't like it. But with humor, that's good medicine. It's good love medicine. With laughter, you can't have a fight if you don't fight. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
You can't meet force with force, but you can meet it by changing the energy in your own conscious space, by changing that by what you do, how you live your life. You know, the gospel according to your own, right? How you live, how you take teachings from all the good things in life, from every walk of life, and you just apply them to yourself, because we're number one, just like that plane. If we don't catch the air first, we're not going to save our young people on the plane. Did you hear that one too? Tough crowd.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. First, you take the thing first.
So you're right, both of you. And God bless you, healthcare workers. We can't say enough about that. You're keeping the country going. just like you guys, the truckers, all the people that were forgotten, the invisible ones, are now at the front. And everybody, every Joe and Josephine banana on the face of the planet is realizing how important everyone is in these fields that we took for granted. That's love, the recognition of something and someone that needs to be acknowledged, right? Oh, I could go on. And Cheryl, if you ever need anybody to just listen, I know I'm a big talker, but I'm a real good listener. So anytime you want to give me your stuff, and I'll take it to the ceremony and burn it for you so that you have a clean to go on your journey. You too, Mary. You too, Matt. That's love.
Big. I got everything going. Yeah. Okay. So apparently, we're getting some. Thank you, Donna. Sorry. We're getting some great comments, and there are 26 people watching us right now, which I guess is a record for this. So you can start sweating now and getting nervous, but I guess we've got, quite a lot of lovely eyeballs on our conversation. And so one of the viewers, I guess, I don't know if I can use her name or not, but anyway, she is saying that she loves Cheryl's phrase of radical kindness. And she was saying it takes radical kindness to extend love to individuals who present with such hateful attitudes and behavior. But we have no idea what their journey has been. And that might have been one of fear and anger, resentment, abandonment that might have led them to where they are. And to do social justice and environmental justice work in a good way, she believes, is always grounded into love. And someone else said, woo, Donna, you're amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. Other people are saying kudos. We're loving this. It's like a super serious soap opera. Not sure what that means. But yeah, so people are really, I think, grooving to this kind of thing. Now, one of the things also, and someone's watching from, oh my Lord, someone's watching from Nova Scotia. Woohoo! Where my father was from. Yeehaw! Anyway, let me just say this. So we're going to be closing up in, 5 or so minutes. But one of the things that I really liked about these 7 Greek words for love and how they've, in a sense, parsed them and separated them and then lived with them, is that in our modern world, we put all of our love eggs into one basket, if you will, because we use the word love, and I can say, oh my God, I love that grilled cheese sandwich I had last night. And then I'll say to my partner, I love you like crazy. And so this one word, we understand the subtle differences between I love that grilled cheese sandwich and I love you, honey. Those are obviously very different shades of it. But I think what I really like about the Greeks having separated them into these different, say, aspects of it is the fact that it allows us to reflect in different ways on love, right? So it's not all about eros, and it's not about falling madly in love, and it's not all about self-love in the narcissistic way, and they break it out into the universal and things. So I'm wondering if for a few minutes before we wrap up, if each of you might sort of comment on this idea of that separating and the pulling together. So, maybe just give it a minute or so each. I don't know who wants to start. Mary, let's go from you. We haven't heard from you for a bit.
That's a tough one. It definitely does overlap, and I've definitely experienced in my own life those overlapping. I love the fact that there is the one for the friendship, and it talks about having an intimate friendship. And often when we think of our friendships, we don't think of them as an intimate relationship, but they really are. With our friends, we share our secrets, we share the vulnerable parts of ourselves, and that is highly intimate. And whenever we're vulnerable with anyone, I also see the need for like the romance and the flirting when it comes to the committed relationships. Sometimes when you share goals, it gets very goal focused, and you kind of focus on those goals as opposed to focusing on each other. And I think that need for that romance and that flirtation is definitely a necessity to keep it going. I love the fact that there is a division between the classifications of what love is.
Yeah, it's almost like having your own, let's say, box of crayons, and you're picking up a different color and you're coloring with it. I mean, I like that. And for me, it's given me a really great way to kind of look at my life. And we'll talk about that, not my life, but we'll talk about it in a second. Just before we go, I'm going to give everybody some homework. Okay, Donna, let's go to you, and then we'll go to Cheryl. You're muted, Donna. Oh, she's muted. There we go.
I'm a geek. I just said I'm menopausal and I forget everything. What did you just say?
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to just get a sense of how this Greek idea of love in these great different nuances is quite different from our modern sense of all or nothing, all eggs in one basket, and this idea that, you know, love isn't real if it's not passionate and pounding and all that kind of stuff.
Well, again, there's stages of love. Just like I use the analogy of when you're young and you're passionate and you're lustful and you spend most of your day in bed and you're skinny and life is great. And then you get older and you can't get it up and you can't get it in and you can't get it around. So you got to figure out how to make love in a different way. So that intimacy, like friendship, right, comes into play. And all the passion that, I mean, you're as good as you once were, or as good as you ever were, that kind of a thing. And you might have that interloping as you get older, but it becomes richer. The fabric becomes richer. And even if you go on to other relationships, as you get older, you get richer in that pursuit. If you want to go there, we'll go there, like Pepe Le Pew. But if you want to go into an older, mature thing and into a more spiritual place together, so yes, it overlaps. I love the Greeks. I mean the Greeks.
Yeah,
I do love the Greeks.
Sure. Everybody likes Greek food. I get that. Okay, Cheryl. Thanks, Donna. Cheryl.
Oh my goodness, Donna, why have I never met you before? You were like so fabulous. You see it, that's right here. All of this happening right here is love. Yeah, no, I think it's like really neato burrito that it's kind of like in different sections, because for me personally, I always just thought love was like, I think love, like I said, love comes in many different forms, but I always thought it just kind of like just melted down to one thing. You know, it's like feeling of like, it's like mutual feelings and everything. But when I'm looking at this like scale going on, I'm like, it goes so many ways, and it's absolutely amazing. Because I mean, you can be like flirtatious and like all fun, but then you can make a friend who can become your family. And like, it's just the way that it all kind of works out, the way that life works out. It's so unpredictable and it's exciting. And just the way that Mary and Donna both explained it, I'm just like, how do I compete with that though?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. It also kind of makes me think too of how we're all trapped in this corner of the world, and we're watching all these movies where someone meets someone else and that is it. And they give absolutely everything to that person, and we get everything from that person. And I know in my own personal relationship, there are ways in which we love each other that are not everyone in that basket. There are a whole bunch of different kinds of things. So where I get my love from my family and friends in different ways, and from Keith in other ways, you know, and it's fantastic then to sort of separate it out and say, wow, I can see how rich my life is and all the love that I have in so many ways and in so many corners, right? And it's not that one thing, and we always believe we're failures if we don't have that rom-com kind of ending love that goes on forever, right? Because we are, in a sense, lied to by media and films, and all of us, our lives fall short. Well, I'm not that beautiful. I'm not that sexy. I'm not this, and my love with him is not that way, et cetera, et cetera. So this has been fantastic. We're going to sort of wrap up, but for all of you wonderful people watching, and for people who will see this as it gets posted and can read it later, I throw out a challenge to you to take a look. I think Tatiana from the library is going to post the 7 words of love, the Greek words, with a brief definition beside them. And just for the heck of it, why don't you take a look at it for your own sake in your own life and sort of say, well, wow, I've got this kind of love and there's that kind of love. And maybe that might help you find a way to see just how rich and full your life is of love. Even if you've got a little bit of this kind, but a whole bunch of that kind and some of that, it kind of adds up to a whole big bag of love. So whatever it is, you know, you can take a look at those 7 words and write your own little thing and post something if you want on the library, you know, as a comment, and say, boy, I really like this, and I found this kind of love and this mixed up, and now I've got that color. And anyway, just go play with it, because it's a time for a little love. So before we go, before we really go, I want to invite everybody to our next Hear and Be Heard 10 Community Conversations, which takes place on the 9th of March, so a month from today. And it's going to be kind of a really different subject, although we sort of danced around it slightly tonight. And it's called You Have to Be Carefully Taught, and it's about racism. So we've got some people who are talking from different perspectives. I'll expect Cheryl and Donna and Mary to maybe be in the audience next month. We have our guests lined up, and we're going to be kind of poking and prodding that quite, for a lot of people, scary, explosive subject, and maybe particularly in central Alberta, where we have had some fairly heavy experiences of late, if you will. So I hope you'll join us again for that on March the 9th. Again, we're starting at 6:30. And so right now, I would like to thank Cheryl Jamie, Donna Bishop, Mary Sabe for joining us this evening, and it has been fantastic. So on behalf of the Red Deer Public Library and the Red Deer Puppetry Collective, I thank you very much for joining us tonight, and I hope you have a good rest of your evening and a loving, loving Valentine's Day, whether you're cuddling up with your cat or your dog or your iguana or your boyfriend or your girlfriend or whatever it is, or all of your boyfriends and all of your girlfriends. You go right ahead. Anyway, happy and good night.